A hyperspace malfunction sends Captain Alayne Collins hurtling across space, straight into the most dangerous night in Westeros. Alone, stranded, and armed with advanced tech, she is curious about why nothing on this world registered on her sensors. Hey everyone, this is TH Stories 80, where we narrate fanfiction audiobooks. Now we begin Chapter 1 of A Tauri in Westeros. Let's dive in. Hyperspace, year 2032. Captain Alayne Collins stared at the bluish-white streaks of the hyperspace tunnel through the clear canopy of her F-502 Space Superiority Fighter, also known as a Sparrow. Through her full-visored helmet, Alayne glanced down at the central console where the middle screen showed an outline of the Sparrow. The aft ventral section, along with the hyperspace reactor within its housing, was highlighted in bright red. She took a deep breath and spoke into the microphone within her helmet. "This is Captain Alayne Collins, Task Force Omega. Does anyone copy?" "I repeat, I am Captain Alayne Collins, part of the Tauri Task Force Omega. I am currently on heading..." Alayne paused, frowning at the topmost left screen as an error message flashed across it. "I have no idea of my heading." Shaking her head, she continued. "After detecting the unstable Naquadria reaction in the core of P6X T67, the Brotherhood's home base, we were ordered to retreat." Alayne thought back to the violent jolt that struck the F-502 just as it entered the hyperspace window, mere seconds after the planet T67 exploded. All she could think then was, hopefully the Brotherhood's weapons have been destroyed. She was supposed to have reached the rendezvous point an hour ago, but she was still in hyperspace, and that was worrying. "Of course something went wrong with my Sparrow. It's just my luck," she thought as she turned her head to the port side panel and pressed the button for the 7th time. "I've tried to deactivate the hyperdrive on my Sparrow, but nothing's happening," she said aloud for the voice data recorder. She turned back to the outline on the plane on the monitor. "I've been getting the same error message for the past 15 minutes. It says the hyperdrive controls to the reactor have fused. In addition, I've been detecting heavy radiation spikes from the aft sensors on the reactor housing." Alayne looked up at the tunnel and added, "I don't know if anyone can hear me, but there's another problem. For the past 10 minutes, the hyperspace reactor's temperature has been creeping upward." She knew that once it passed a certain threshold, the reactor would become unstable and possibly explode. "I've been in the tunnel for over an hour and 50 minutes, and I have about 3 hours of fuel for the hyperdrive," she said into the microphone. "But based on my calculations, I may have 20 minutes before the reactor temperature goes critical." Closing her eyes, Alayne took a deep breath, weighing her options. She didn't want to think yet about how she had gotten into this situation. The rising temperature left no time for reflection. "Okay," she exhaled, opening her eyes. First step. She stared at the lower screen and bit her lip. "Anyone hearing me?" Silence. She sighed. She was alone. "I'm running systems check prior to ejecting the hyperdrive." She knew it was extremely risky to eject the hyperdrive reactor in hyperspace. The newest models were designed for emergency ejection, but never inside a hyperspace tunnel. She had no idea what would happen to the Sparrow afterward. "I just hope to God I'll be close enough to a planet with a Stargate." That was the other issue. Ejecting the hyperdrive could force her out of hyperspace, leaving her in open space with no planets in range. Her subspace communications had a range of only 5 light years. If she ended up alone in the void, she would be in trouble. With that in mind, Alayne reached into a recess and pulled out the checklist. She began her system checks, hoping she was near a Tauri ship, a base, or even an allied civilization. Subspace comms are green, fusion engines are green, weapons green, inertial dampeners are green, hyperspace engines are near critical, controls fused, emergency systems are... The letters on the screen turned yellow when it came to the emergency Naquadria generators, meant to activate if the Sparrow lost power from its main reactor. "We'll find out once I eject the hyperdrive." And life support is green. Taking another breath, Alayne reached for a button on the starboard panel and whispered, "Ejecting the hyperdrive reactor on my mark." She steadied herself. 3, 2, 1, mark. Her finger pressed the blinking yellow button. A slight jolt ran through the Sparrow. followed by a rumble as a panel on the aft ventral section slid open. Sparks erupted from within the recess before a glowing green square-shaped box slid out into hyperspace. Back in the cockpit, alarms blared as the hyperspace tunnel tore apart. The Sparrow was violently expelled into normal space just before the window collapsed. The sensors detected a violent explosion behind her, but her speed wasn't decreasing. Alayne gritted her teeth, holding the controls tight as the G-forces pressed into her, even through the inertial dampeners. "Come on," she shouted as the ship, surrounded by stars, shot forward at incredible speed. The blue glow of the engines was gone. They were offline. She was hurtling forward on momentum alone. "Shields are operational," she yelled as an orange hue enveloped the ship before fading, the shield emitters activating automatically. She activated the RCS thrusters, slowing the Sparrow bit by bit, and began restarting the fusion engines. The sensors detected a planet several 100,000 miles away. She looked up, seeing its bluish glow glowing rapidly. "Restarting engines in 3, 2, 1. She pressed a sequence of buttons. A low rumble echoed through the ship. Blue light flickered inside the two fusion engines. The hyperspace engines remained dark. The flicker steadied as Alayne regained speed control and continued firing the RCS thrusters. The rumble softened into a hum. "There we go," she thought as the engine stabilized. The Sparrow slowed until it drifted 100,000 miles from the planet, now looming large. Breathing deeply, she began scanning the planet with the upgraded Asgard Tauri hybrid sensors while transmitting over subspace. "I'm not sure if anyone can hear me, but this is Captain Alayne Collins of the Tauri, calling for help on all allied channels. Does anyone read me?" No response. "I can't stay up here long," she whispered, checking aft radiation levels. They had returned to normal. She turned her gaze toward the planet. "I can go down to the surface and wait for rescue. The problem is I'll be alone." According to her scanners, the planet was devoid of life, despite appearing perfectly suited for it. Curious, Alayne thought as she began her descent into the atmosphere. Initiating distress signal. Hopefully one of the ships from Homeworld Command will head this way if they haven't heard from me within 3 hours. Her ship trembled and groaned as flames surrounded the shield. Hopefully they'll find signs of my entry window and extrapolate my trajectory, she thought. She didn't want to be the only life form on the planet. As the flames faded, a blinking red light on her console flashed once before vanishing, along with the rest of the ship's power. Power surge! There was a warning, she realized as the Sparrow became a powerless rock plummeting toward the surface. "Come on, come on, come on!" she whispered as a violent shaking rattled her bones. With trembling hands, she pressed the emergency reset, normally used to shut down all systems. She counted to 60, the Sparrow screaming through the mesosphere. "Come on, start, start," she whispered, holding the button down. Flashes appeared on her forward screens as systems rebooted. The digital compass returned, followed by the horizon indicator. Buttons lit up. She grabbed the navigation stick and throttle. The inertial dampeners reactivated. The engines hummed awake. Blue light flared behind her, and the descent slowed. By the time she reached the stratosphere, the Sparrow was back under her control. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she guided the ship downward. She needed to land, run diagnostics, and reset any corrupted systems. A beeping sound drew her eyes to the central console. Life signs were appearing from the surface as she closed in on the troposphere. Narrowing her eyes, she pushed through the clouds and emerged into an evening sky over a sprawling city. A red-colored castle perched on the edge of a cliff dominated the skyline. Awestruck by the tallest tower overlooking a bay full of ships, Alayne glanced at the sensor readings. Over 1 million people. Whoa, why didn't my scanners detect any of this? At 20,000 feet in the darkening sky, she knew the locals would barely notice her. This planet was supposed to be uninhabited, so how did... and what caused that power outage? She set the sensors to detect advanced technology. Why else would there have been a surge strong enough to shut down my Sparrow? She continued flying, collecting more data. She headed east for several hundred miles before banking south. The civilization beneath her was sprawling and vibrant. Definitely worth exploring, she thought. But first, she needed a secluded place to land, somewhere out of sight to avoid scaring the locals. Banking north, she soared over forests and rivers, reflecting the last light of day. "Wow," Alayne whispered as she leaned left to view a nearby castle whose towers looked melted like wax. What happened? Sensor scans confirmed the stone had been molten. The heat needed to melt stone, she wondered. But I'm not getting any signs of advanced technology. And that raised another question. How could the most advanced sensors in the galaxy, capable of scanning hundreds of kilometers underground, not detect any life forms from orbit? What's going on here? She flew past mountain ranges to her starboard side. Sensors are detecting signs of life from the mountain passes, she muttered. A chill crawled up her spine as she neared what the natives would call the Green Fork. Moments later, she flew high over between two stone towers connected by a bridge. Fires burned below, and what looked like a celebration was underway, but her sensors registered no people within a mile of the structure. Confused, Alayne scanned the surrounding forest and found it empty. She banked toward a clearing deeper in the woods, where no life signs registered. The Sparrow hovered over the clearing as its landing gear deployed, then lowered gently onto the grass. Alayne powered down the ship and activated the distress beacon. She began a full diagnostic, one that would check for corruption in the operating system and repair any found issues. The screen indicated the diagnostic would take an hour. Sighing, she opened the canopy. Her bright red hair spilled free after she removed her helmet and placed it at her feet. She climbed out of her seat and stood, inhaling deeply as the smell of cooked meat drifted through the air. There's no one close by, so it must be coming from the castle, she thought. Maybe she could mingle with the locals, at least until the diagnostic finished. I'll need something to help me blend in, and I'll need to be armed. She turned, pulled down the seat back, pressed the latch in the recess, and retrieved an orange bag. From it, she pulled out a tactical vest and put it on after ensuring she was still alone. Then she took out a plasma weapon and thigh holster, set the weapon to stun, and holstered it. She retrieved her small rectangular subspace radio and earpiece, slipped the earpiece in, and placed the radio in her vest pocket. After stowing everything, she replaced the cushion and sat again. Then she pressed a button on the port console. A row of external horizontal panels opened to form a ladder extended to the ground. She climbed down, then keyed in a code on a nearby panel, watched the ladder retract and the canopy close. Let's see if I can find anything to help me blend in, Alayne thought as she walked toward the trees in the direction of the distant castle. The Great Hall, the twins, half an hour later. We have guest rights, thought Catelyn Stark to herself amid the whooping cheers and drunken yells of joy all around her as she nodded at her brother, Edmure, who was being pushed past her and out of the Great Hall with his new Frey bride. Yet, the reminder of guest right kept repeating in her mind as she turned her head and glanced at Walder Frey. The man is petty, deceitful, and has no honor. But not even he would dare do anything after granting guest right. Catelyn then looked over at her son, Robb. She wasn't too fond of him breaking his oath to the Freys regarding marrying the girl, Rosalind. I hope your mistake does not come back to haunt us, my son. But she couldn't stay angry with Robb for long, especially with his wife pregnant with the heir to Winterfell, her grandson. Still, the redhead couldn't help but glare at Talisa at times before looking away to her right as the bedding party exited the door. It was then that she noticed two things. Someone slipping into the great hall wearing a cloak and hood that hid the face, followed by one of the Freys closing the large doors and locking them. Narrowing her eyes as a chill went up her spine, Catelyn searched for the cloaked figure and found her at the corner of the hall, staring back. Under the torchlight along the wall, a bit of that light fell across her face. Catelyn stared at the surprised expression looking back at her. "Sansa?" she whispered. Catelyn saw the woman, several strands of red hair across her face, mouth something she couldn't hear before looking away and shaking her head. Catelyn was about to stride toward the woman who looked so much like her daughter. She wanted to know how she had gotten out of King's Landing, where Arya was. So many questions ran through Catelyn's mind when she suddenly froze. Her mouth fell open in stunned silence as her head turned upward to the gallery where the minstrels were now playing a song she dreaded to hear. The Rains of Castamere. Catelyn thought as she looked back for the figure from moments ago. But she was gone. Catelyn's mind raced as the song continued, while everyone else remained cheerful, bellies full of drink, enjoying the wedding. No, Walder Frey would never dare. No, Catelyn insisted to herself before catching sight of the cloaked figure again, now heading for the locked doors. "Your Grace," the eldest Frey exclaimed in what Catelyn considered a mocking tone. She saw the figure stop and stare at Robb, who had risen from his seat. Catelyn wanted to call out to the figure she thought was Sansa, but before she could, she felt a hand grab her own. Turning around as Walder spoke to Robb about honor and oaths, Catelyn stared into the cold eyes of Roose Bolton. She saw his gaze flicker downward while he held her hand tightly. Catelyn licked her suddenly dry lips and looked down at his hand. She could see a glint of metal. Walder continued to berate Robb. With her trembling left hand, Catelyn grabbed the end of Bolton's sleeve and pulled it up. Mail, she realized, looking back up at Roose Bolton's victorious expression. No. She glanced at the figure who was staring back at her, then at Robb. Catelyn could see the woman's eyes narrow in confusion as she stepped slightly to the left, as if trying to get a clearer view. "Sansa!" Catelyn yelled at the top of her voice. The entire hall fell silent. Even Walder Frey stopped talking and stared at her. Roose Bolton turned from Catelyn toward the figure, who pulled back her hood and stared in stunned confusion. "Sansa?" Robb whispered, turning and seeing the redhead with short hair ending just at the back of her neck. Catelyn slapped Roose, forcing the Lord of the Dreadfort back toward another table from the sheer force of the blow. She spun toward Robb. "It's a trap." To be continued.